Let me answer it the way that I think I'm hearing it. I would, like, when we were sort of doing that one minor to the four minor, and over that four minor utilizing like our relative arpeggio, what we want to do is musically introduce that arpeggio over that chord, right? The only thing is I was just doing it one beat beforehand. So when I'm utilizing arpeggios, and you can get more creative and more creative with arpeggios, but when I'm utilizing arpeggios, it is very chord specific, you know, because that, if I were doing that one to my four chord, right? And I was, like we were sort of saying, if I'm just, I mean, gosh, you know, both Santana and the Allman Brothers like kept it so simple, you know. There's not that confusing. If I was doing something like that, hearing that is going to be like, ooh, what is that? And that is going to be chord specific. You know what I mean? Whether I want to do a minor or that like sort of like relative major, which almost sound kind of the same, but that's the way that I would think of it. Doing either the chord, like if I go to that four chord, if I go to that D minor, generally I'm going to do a D minor arpeggio if I want to do an arpeggio, or it's relative major, right? I can get more creative if I really, really want to. That gets a little bit more into some jazz and fusion stuff, you know what I mean? But generally that's where I would go with it to keep it at a level that I personally enjoy playing, you know? Does that make sense? Is that the answer? And it goes the other way also, just because you did say relative minor. So if it was like a one chord, you know, and I went to a four major seven, I could do like that like a D major seven, right? Or even just a D major if I wanted to. I still could do a B minor seven arpeggio for that, right? And it would just be like the six. It would be like a 6 root 3 5. So it becomes a 6 chord basically if you do it. So you can do the relative, you know. A 6 chord also, just like, it sounds really nice, you know, if like for whatever you're playing. It we were using it as a passing tone before when we were sort of doing the right, where you're playing that bar chord and you're sort of like using your pinky on the 9th fret of the B string, right? That's your 6. It sounds nice. It's a nice soft sound, especially when it's not used as like a tension. So yeah, but it'll work. You can do the relative majors and minors. The other thing to get creative with as well is you don't always have to start on the root note, and if you're doing a relative or not, but you don't have to start on the root note of the arpeggio. Now, there is a time for it, right? If we were doing, you know, like, God, MIA by Avenged Sevenfold has like those arpeggios, and they're running them up and down, and they're really sticking to. Now they're harmonized, but they're doing those arpeggios like a D minor, right? Running like sort of up and down. I don't know what key the song is in, you know. And then maybe they'll switch to F, and they're doing right to get each one of those arpeggios. They're doing that, right? And that has a specific sound, but you don't have to, which is also really, really cool. You can get creative. You can play you don't have to play the arpeggio ascending or descending. You know, like let's just say I had that, right? One chord to my 4 minor chord, and I was going to do the relative arpeggio. I could start, you know, I'm like starting on the 3, going to the root note. I'm looking at it as an F, so I'm looking at it as its actual relative. Right, 3 1 5 3 1 5, like 3 5 or 3 1 5, right? That I could, you know, get as creative as you want with them, to the point where, and this was something that Ken was asking a little while ago, where it's no longer an arpeggio, right? And what I mean by that is some of the exercises that we're doing. Like if I had that like, you know, A major 7, right? And I had the arpeggio that's sort of like our exercise, right? And a great question was, are you just using that as an arpeggio or a way to get around the neck? Both, because I can do that if I wanted that sound, or right, just to know where I am. So it's almost like doing this is coming from the, like, almost like visually the same place as like, you know, it's like I'm visually coming from the same place. How much do I want to play that arpeggio or not? And this, as we're sort of like trying to get way back in week 1, even in week 2, thinking of how much can I get away from position 1 of the pentatonic, position 2 of the pentatonic, position 3 of the pentatonic? How much can I get away? Like, so it blends basically, right? Because usually like what would happen there is I could play that confidently, and then when I like move up here, it starts getting really blocky because I'm not as confident in that area, right? So what we want to do is be able to blend them. And that's the same with this. Can I take that arpeggio? Do I have to think of it just as an arpeggio? Or can I just use it as a means to get around the neck? You know, that's when it becomes really useful. So that you're not playing whatever it is that you were playing and then almost like pausing and being like, oh, arpeggio time, you know, and sort of going into it. If that, you know, that makes sense. Getting as creative as you want with it, you know what I mean? You know, and using it as a placeholder is just like my favorite way to use it personally. So yeah, because then it's like it's always there. You know what I mean? It's never just like, oh, arpeggio time, you know, which is really great. And in this, like when we're talking about, this is like sort of perfectly goes into the next thing that I wanted to sort of talk about from this. When we're developing a motif, you know, and being able to sort of like swing from just like playing, you know, whatever it is that I'm playing into like an arpeggio or back again, just thinking of it as, hey, this is the scale and these are the notes, you know what I mean? If I'm playing my motif, what I will notice is, you know, the best motifs come out very sing-song, you know what I mean? And what that means is that the jumps are generally a second, which just means the next note in the scale, or a third, right? So you're just like passing, right? Because the you know, in memory of Elizabeth Reed, you know, the 5 to the flat 7 to the root note, right? That's a third jump. He skipped over the 6, you know, for that. But that's what's going to keep it, you know, in a really nice motif is something that we can sing back, you know. And there tends to be like a range to not necessarily jump out of, right? If I have something that is a little bit more like, right, that's very fast jumping, and everything is in thirds, or there's also going to be a fourth somewhere in there, right? Third, minor third, fourth, third, minor third, that's the jump. But I'm also going from this note to like basically like an octave and almost an octave and a half. I mean, an octave and a half would be the tritone, but right, all the way up there. That's a huge jump. You can't really sing that. You know what I mean? To be able to like just sing that, but you could. Right, and that's where our motif comes in. Right, so building a strong motif is staying in this, you know, can I sing that back kind of area, and then the arpeggios breaks us out of that motif. That's particularly the way that I like to use arpeggios. And they do, like I was sort of saying, Avenged Sevenfold or, some other metal bands, the arpeggio itself does turn into a bit of a motif, like sort of just like running up and down arpeggios. If that's the sound, that you're really looking to create, because that is a very different sound than trying to come up with something listenable, and sort of like singing it back. It's almost like, just like a piano player would do that, just like play one chord and play like up an octave and back down again would be the same thing that sort of running those arpeggios up and down is sort of doing. I want to get into developing more motif and getting longer stories, like paragraphs, like, rather than we've sort of just been doing like 2 to 4 note phrases. So I want to do that, but I want to just really quickly continue what we were doing with our blues. I want to show you some options, like while you're playing the blues, and then this is going to open up some of the things that we're going to do later. But if I have just my 1-4-5, right? If I'm here in A, I've got my 1-4-5, A7, D7, and E7. I can look at this in just one position, completely modally, okay? Now, what I mean by that is, if I just have an A7, I would just have my A Mixolydian scale, right? If I had my D7, I would have my D Mixolydian scale, but I would be starting it on A. So that would be almost like a Dorian, okay? How I would do that, and we're doing this a little bit before, is if I was doing a D Mixolydian, D would be my 5, and I would want to find what that A was, and I'm just going to count backwards, right? 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, it's a 2. Okay, so that would be Dorian. That's how I would find how to play that D Mixolydian, but staying within this position, right? Does that counting backwards make sense? Cool. So what we're doing is, I'm saying, okay, I've got A Mixolydian, awesome. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, right? When I switch to my 4 chord, my D, I now have A Dorian, but it's not 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6. It's actually going to be 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, 3, right? That's now my scale, because I'm just using Dorian as the position, but I'm still looking at D as my 1 because it's a D7 chord, right? Does that sit well? That idea? Cool. And then the same thing when I go up to my 5 chord, right? This is like a little easier to visualize, but if that's my 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I would be in this position in A Ionian, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is my 5 chord. So I'm playing over my 1 chord, A Mixolydian, over my 4 chord, A Dorian, right? And then over my 5 chord, just regular A Ionian, right? It's not going to sound amazing, but I want you to try it. I'm going to do a couple of 12-bar blues. I want you to try that. So just think Mixolydian for the 1 chord, Dorian for my 4 chord, back to Mixolydian for my 1 chord, and then Ionian, the major scale, for my 5 chord, right? I'm going to go a little slower with this one so you can hear it out, and I'll call the changes out just so you don't get lost. I just want you to try it and see how this sits. Same thing also, just when you're doing the Ionian, right? It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, right? Because you want that 5 is what your chord is really built off of. You know what I mean? So this gets us to play one position, but thinking of another chord, another tonal center, Because just like we had gone over before, if I have this G, right? I'm playing in G major, I would have G Ionian, right, I would have all of the same notes would be A Dorian, all of the same notes would be B Phrygian. I'm just using those as my forms, my placeholders, but I'm never really losing where my root note is, or the fact that I'm in G. So we're gonna do the same thing. Mixolydian for the 1, Dorian for the 4, Ionian for the 5, and just know where those tonal centers are. The 1, that 4, and the 5. So let's try it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 chord coming out. We'll switch to Dorian. Back to my 1 chord, Mixolydian. 5 chord, Ionian. Here we go. 4 chord. That's where it gets a little tricky, just moving quickly. 1 chord to my 5. Back to my 1. Mixolydian. To my 4 chord. Back to my 1 chord. To my 5 chord. 4, 1, and then my 5. Back again. Now my 4, Dorian for the 4. Back to my 1. My 5 chord. My 5. Cool. All right. Nice and close, and do some examples for this. One thing to think of, when we're thinking of how to address the next chord, or how to address the next scale, whatever it is, the next melody, is, we're sort of thinking of what notes are in common with whatever we're playing before and what aren't. So if I have my 1 to my 4, right, that's why, right, my root note in that blues really works, because that is obviously the root note of the 1 chord, and the 5 of the 4 chord. That's my common tone, And then usually if I'm really drilling in a lot of like tension and resolution, I'll bring it up to the 2 for that 5 chord, really specifically to get close but not close enough, for that 5 chord, and it really drives home the change, just because that root note, or the 2 for the 5 chord, because that root note works over both. So if I'm looking at this, as I go through my examples, I'm not going to get super creative with it. I'm going to stay nice and close and pretty modal, like just sort of playing the modes. But if I have my Mixolydian here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. The only difference from that to Dorian is a flat 3. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. That's going to be the only difference. That flat 3 is the flat 7 of my 4 chord. So I might want to play a little bit into the major third for my 1 chord, and then really play into the flat 3 for my 4 chord as I'm sort of doing this. One other thing to think about too is I have this Dorian for my 1 chord, right? This Dorian for my 4 chord. When it goes up to the 5, I now am doing Ionian, right? Focusing on the 5, the 4, 5, right? Because that's my flat 7 of the 5 chord. 4, 5, 7, 2, right? Or flat 7, 1, 3, 5 of my 5 chord. It's going to be my focus when I get to that Ionian for the 5 chord, right? What is interesting is if I'm playing A Ionian, it's the same grouping of notes as B Dorian, right? First mode, second mode, it's the same grouping of notes. You notice everything that we're doing for the 4 chord, we can just move it up a whole step to the 5 chord and back down again. So a lot of people will play something, right, in Dorian, go back to the 1 chord, right, hit Dorian, right, and then play it a whole step below for the 4 chord. Something to think about. I do want to stick just to A, but that is why the A Ionian works, is because we're essentially playing this B Dorian. You know, we're playing the same grouping of notes. So here we go. Let's see, I'm going to do the slow blues that's going to be in the playlist. So not the same exact backing track, but so Mixolydian. Now I have my quick 4 chord, flat 3, major 3rd for Mixolydian back to the 1 chord. Still focusing on the right notes. Now here comes Ionian for the 5 chord, so I might want to do really stopping on that 5, 7, and 2, flat 3 for my Dorian, back to Mixolydian for my 1. I'm not going to talk through it this time. So Mixolydian here. I got it. All right, I had an ad there, but it was a good time to stop just because I'm going to do the same thing. What we want to get our ear and our mind around is when I have my 1 chord, that A, Mixolydian, right, that A is my root note. When I get to that 4 chord, when I'm using my Dorian as the placeholder to tell me what notes, that the 4 now, right, or the 1 of that 4 chord is my tonal center. So you'll hear the A is still going to work because it's part of that 4 chord. But I want you to be playing an A Mixolydian for that A7 chord, right? So you're really going to be playing an A Mixolydian, right? And then A and A Dorian for that 4 chord, but, you know, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, right? We're just, instead of 1, 2, flat 3, 4, you know, you're going to be aiming, that is your tonal center now. And same when I go to my Ionian, that's my 1, that's my tonal center, the 5, when I go to Ionian for the 5 chord. So I'm not going to blab through it. Okay, here we go. Chord. All right, so, and I'm purposefully trying to play it nice and easy, sound a little bit more modal than trying to get really musical with it. So if I could take that concept, I can now move that in to whatever it is that I'm creating. Always for the 4, you know, like that was like sort of just going from a 1, and then when I got to that flat 3, you know, if I want to use that to outline my 4 chord, and then right back to the pentatonic. So it's just ideas that you can pluck from, right? Because you listen to that last solo, and that's not how I would particularly like to play the blues, you know. I mean, even if I did make it more complex, you know, I would want to give it a little bit more, you know, flat 3 on the chord with the 1 chord that has a major 3, right? Getting that sort of tension and a little bit more of that drive, and not being so musically, I'm gonna say musically perfect. I mean, I know that's subjective, but I just mean like on paper, playing the perfect tones for that music. Like I like you know, you want to bend the rules a little bit, but it's something to pluck from, and it's a really good lesson in visualizing the fretboard as I'm playing this, you know, major scale, but really that's my 1, right? 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, even though that's Ionian positionally, right? That's just a really great way to look at it. What's really cool about that, and what ends up coming out differently, is even though you're sort of saying like, okay, I have my 5 chord, you know, that's my root note of that chord, right? But I'm gonna stay in this position, and it's technically like positionally Ionian, even though it's 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, because that's my chord. Things will still come out differently. You know, the way that you're gonna play that is gonna be different than, you know, even the, you know, like those kind of licks, like over the 5 chords specifically. But what's really great is it allows us to be thinking of modes in their 5th position. And right now I'm gonna just like really quickly, I'm gonna show you why this is so beneficial. The blues is great too because it's like sort of like consistently changing as you go through the progression. But let's just say I'm going to do this in Ionian just to make it super easy, right? Say I have, I'll do C, right? If I have C major, right? So I'm going to do C Ionian. If I go up here to my 8th fret and I just play my C major scale, if I just move that or stretch that up to the 3 note per string one, right? That one, where I sort of like get up to almost like a little bit of that Dorian right there. If I do that, that gives me the 8th fret up to the 12th fret or even the 13th fret, right? So that's a pretty good span. And then also down to the 7th fret. So that's a lot to cover, right? For one scale, right? And without getting lost. Right? I can sort of stay in that whole position, right? And not get super lost. Now, if I take the same thing and do the relative, which we've been doing this whole time, which is, right, my major pentatonic, now I have the 5th fret, even the 4th fret down here, right, all the way up to my 13th fret, okay? Now what happens is I have here. All right, now I need to fill in one little spot, okay? And that's this. Luckily, as I'm sort of looking at this, I can look at my G form there that I sort of like always look at, right? And that helps me get to the A form, right, of the cage system. This is the missing part, right? This is the one part that isn't quite there, and I can easily fill it in with what we just did. And what we just did was say, okay, I'm in C major. The 5th G is like 1, 7, 6, 5 is G Mixolydian, okay? But it's 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's how I'm looking at this. I'm playing the position of G Mixolydian, but I'm actually playing the C major scale, just starting on the G. Now, if I think about that, I've got my C. And now I'm right back to where I started. Now there's no area that I'm going to be confused by, because I'm really going to be stuck on like this sort of E shape, right? 3 notes per string, right? First position, down to my major pentatonic that I can add my other notes to make it my full major scale, down to now right? That's going to give me the whole neck. So this is what I want you guys to try. I'm going to just play a C major chord. All right. I want you to try your regular C Ionian, right? However you want to play it, and then, you know, just expand. You don't have to keep, like, just because you're doing it, you know, 3 notes per string to expand it up to that 13th fret. You don't have to stay there. You can just do the other sort of like first position of Ionian, and then down to that major pentatonic form, adding the 4 and the 7 in there as well. And then see if you can then try to integrate. All right, I know what my G mixolydian is, but the C is my chord tone, my tonal center. Right, see if you can start bridging all of that together. I'm just gonna play a C, right? Don't worry necessarily about motifs or anything like that. I'm just gonna play the C and just go ahead and like riff it out for me. So 1, you're gonna try to get the whole neck in there at whatever speed is comfortable. But 1, 2, 3, 4. How's that work? Yeah. All the last form of this is like, can I play in some key, right, whatever it is, and just play the 5th? The other reason that this becomes so valuable is whatever song I'm playing, you know, if I have a C major, right, we're really comfortable up here, right, with that Ionian, and then bridging up, right, up here, and then, right, bringing it down here. When it gets a little tricky is when it gets down here, like I was saying, but this is really common. It's a really common place to play that C major bar chord, right? So if I can just learn that mode off of this position, right, not only is that just super beneficial because I'm going to be playing, right, a C major, or C major 7, or a C7, whatever it is, with the root note on the A string. It's going to happen a ton, but it's going to help me learn that position right there, and then that's the only one that gets a little bit shaky, you know. So that's why I think, you know, it's really great to be able to do that, and then like even using, you know, the arpeggios if right, that's what I want to do from that point on, but knowing where I am at all times, you know, and we can do it with major, we can do it with minor, you know, in any form of that, Lydian, mixolydian, or natural minor, you know, Phrygian, and so forth. So be some backing track stuff with that, with a couple of different keys and stuff. So, and then eventually, if you're down in here and you notice yourself playing like, right, a lot of mixolydian, and what I mean by that is like ending on the G, right? Because you're like sort of playing it as a G mixolydian rather than just the position of G mixolydian, but actually in a C major. You're going to notice that happening, you know, which is going to give you some like melodically cool options to sort of take note of. And then eventually you'll whatever it is that you want to play, you'll be able to play it anywhere and it'll sound exactly the same. If you're in, you know, your sort of like first position, right, up here, right, if you're down here or right there, you'll be able to play it exactly how you want to. But right now, it sort of does look like you're playing a G, a G Mixolydian, and you'll notice some melodic things that are going to come of it. Because playing a G Mixolydian, the G is the fifth of the chord, so right, it's still going to sound interesting, for sure. Awesome.